Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, here in New York City, joined via Skype by the legendary owner and founder and co-chairperson of Tournament Poker Edge itself, the one and only Killingbird, Derek Tenbush. How are you, Derek?
I'm doing good, Clayton. How are you doing tonight?
Really good. So you went to Reno, is that true?
Yes. Just got back, a week ago, I guess, or 5 days ago or something. It's been a blur ever since because I got the Reno Flu. As soon as I got back, I was instantly sick. But now I'm feeling much better today, thank God, because it was a rough few days.
There can't be a Reno Flu. That's not... I'm sorry, that can't be a thing.
It's like the Rio flu, only worse. I don't know what it is. I think my wife has a philosophy that it's because I work at home and basically never go outdoors around people. So every time I go anywhere, especially for an extended period of time, I almost always get sick. So after Vegas, I'm sick. After a vacation, I'm sick. And Reno was no different, unfortunately.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. It reminds me of the year when the Legionnaire's disease outbreak occurred in the middle of the World Series of Poker. Were you in Vegas when that was all going on?
Yeah, that was crazy. It kind of
like 100 people contracted this like horrible stomach virus, Legionnaire's disease, and it was during the Millionaire Maker. So I said I don't want to play the Legionnaire Maker.
The funny thing was, I was on the plane to Reno, and there was a guy wearing like a surgical mask type situation, and I was like, "Man, come on! Like, it's not that bad. Like, you're in a closed space with some people, but you're probably going to be fine, you know." And of course, he was obviously the smart one because I bet you he didn't get sick like I did.
That's it. Now, this will hopefully make you a big hypochondriac, so you won't be able to fly without your flying mask.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So did Mark end up going?
Yep, Mark came out he was just out for a few days. We've kind of made it this like annual thing where we basically get together just for the sole purpose of hanging out, watching football, and betting on sports. So we kind of did like 2 nights of that, basically like college football and pro football, and then he went home, and then that's when I started playing poker. Even I only got I was there 5 nights, and I played 4 tournaments. So actually 4 tournaments. So I managed to get in some decent amount of poker, but unfortunately didn't have much success.
Well, that's definitely more tournaments than you played last year. I think last year you guys went to Run It Up Reno and just like drank it up, Reno.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, all right, I flew all the way. Last time I was in Nevada when Run It Up Reno happened, so it wasn't like I felt, and I was living in Vegas, so it's not like I was like, oh, I have to play poker, this is my only chance. I could play poker anytime I wanted. But this time I was like, okay, I now am back in a state where there's no live poker, so if I'm going to go all the way to Reno, I probably should play some poker while I'm there.
Well, that's cool. I'm glad you did. And did Mark he was only there for a couple of days. Did he get to play any tournaments?
Nope, he didn't play any.
Okay. He came, hung out. Now, you guys have been doing this for how many years now? Like, this is your thing, that you get together?
Yeah, this is only our second year doing Run It Up Reno, but we've kind of made it a thing where we try to get together somewhere and do something. So, like, one year I just basically went to San Francisco where he lives, and we basically just watched. It was the opening week of the NFL, so we basically just did a bunch of DFS stuff and like watched football and hung out, hit a couple breweries, and then went home. So yeah, we try to get together like once a year. We're really good friends and stuff, but we obviously live on completely opposite sides of the country, so we just sort of force ourselves to hang out once in a while.
That's good. There's no friends like old friends, and you guys have known each other a long time, so
yeah.
That's cool. Sorry you didn't have any success at the tables, but I remember before you took off, you were saying that you really look forward to Reno because it feels more like a Twitch meetup rather than a serious poker event.
Yeah, it's got a really good vibe to it, and I got to meet a lot of people who I hadn't met before this year, and I also got to reconnect with a lot of old friends and people who I know sort of from Twitch, but not in real life, as they say. So it was super cool. It's funny because my friend Melissa was there, and she was giving me and Mark a hard time because she basically says like all we ever do is like travel to poker tournaments and never play poker. And I'm like, yeah, because that's because I want to hang out with people like you. So we just like chill at the bar or go out to dinner. Had some great dinners while we were there. And it was fun too. Like even while playing, like just I had some really good table draws in terms of like fun people. Like I played the what was it, a 235 progressive knockout, I think it was, and the Melissa who I just mentioned and my friend Drew were like one table over, and then at my table were like 4 people that I sort of know from the Twitch community and stuff, and everybody was just kind of laughing, having a good time. Oh, Matt Stott was actually at my that table as well. I know you know Matt.
Yeah, that's awesome. He's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, he actually is. He's the one who knocked me out. So screw that guy.
He's not so great. I've never liked him.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping you'd say.
That guy sucks. Yeah. I'll be seeing Matt soon. We're doing another charity series of poker event in November somewhere in California. So I'll definitely update you guys about that once I have all the details. But yeah, we've got something in the works. He's been busy with that CSOP. So.
Yeah, he did. There was an event there. I think it was the opening night, and that's basically the night I got in, so I didn't really get to go play it because I was just sort of traveling and getting checked in and all that fun kind of stuff. But from what I heard, it went really well. So.
Yeah. Now, is Mike Postle still the talk of the town? I haven't actually been seated at a poker table since the scandal broke. Is he really on everybody's mind?
It was kind of interesting. Like, I assumed that I would have at least, half a dozen extended conversations about the Mike Postle situation, which just ended up not actually happening. But every table there was a joke about that was the thing. Like somebody would like make a big call, they'd be like, "Did you just Postle me?" and stuff like that. So nobody had it. It seemed like everybody's kind of burnt out on like actually talking about it, like whether he did it, whether he didn't, what's the evidence, what's the latest evidence. Now it's just making fun of him. And if I saw several like Mike Postle T-shirts. My favorite was my buddy John had one that said "Crotch Theory Optimal" on it. I thought that was pretty good. So it was definitely it was in the air. But like I said, it just seemed like everybody was like tired of talking about it, so nobody cared to like bring it up in an actual conversation.
Well, I think our timing of taking that rare week off a couple of weeks ago, perfect timing, because I think everybody was starting to get burned out. Like podcasters that haven't done an episode in over a year suddenly like needed to do an episode because this was, it was newsworthy and something different to talk about, and it kind of brought up some other issues for people, like just about how safe are all the games, how often have we been cheated. I remember one time I was in Australia playing in the Aussie Millions, and the dealers there are so good. Shout out, by the way, to the Crown Casino in Melbourne, Australia. The dealer noticed a mark on the cards, and without any player pointing it out, she called the floor and said, there's a mark on this card, I'll need a new deck. And they brought her a new deck, a whole new setup, and a short while later she noticed another mark on the card. We had a whole new deck again. That's how they do it there. Like in Vegas, they will just replace the one card.
Right.
I need a 3 of spades from the green deck or whatever the case may be. But she found 4 or 5 different marks and stopped the game each time. And finally, the supervisor said, "Listen, if you guys keep marking the cards, we're going to keep stopping your game. Our dealers are too good at spotting these things, so whoever's marking the cards, just stop it."
Yeah.
And after that, we didn't have a problem anymore. And I compare that with the experiences I've had in the U.S. when I've suspected that there was someone marking the cards, or that if I see anything on the cards, many times the dealer seems annoyed that I'm asking him to maybe make the game is fair.
Yeah.
They just seem to give you like an attitude a lot. Like, oh, really? We had to get a whole new deck because you see that all the aces have a turned up corner. This is really that big a deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. So.
Oh, you want a fair poker game?
Yeah. Oh, that makes me have to do my job. That sucks. Yeah. So I just noticed kind of a difference in, just the attitude towards cheating, and I feel like because the dealers, especially during the World Series, they're all kind of, I shouldn't say all, but many of them are sort of bitter. They feel underpaid. They feel underappreciated. They are definitely overworked, and that's not debatable. And I feel like many times they become surly by like mid-June. So by the time the ninth player this week asks for a change of a card because there's a little crease or a streak or a little mark, they're just over it, which is unprofessional of them, but at the same time I understand it is a hard job.
Yeah, I remember it seemed like there was one year at the World Series where they were having a lot of trouble with the cards. I don't remember if it was that they were getting marked up or that they were already, like, the printing was actually flawed on the backs, but I'm sure the dealers were really hating life that year.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It was 3 or 4 years ago, I think, and they were having so many problems with the cards. The cards were, like, too flimsy. I think they had changed every couple years. They change whoever is the official playing card of the World Series of Poker, probably because they get a sweetheart deal from somebody.
Right.
We'll make you 20,000 decks of cards if you whatever. I guess it would have to be more than that. How many decks of cards do you think they go through during the summer? Maybe 1 million.
Wow, I can't even imagine. Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, it's literally got to be like 100,000 or something, right?
Yeah, it's probably not 1 million, but it's definitely more than 20,000, right?
I mean, there's two at every table, and there's a lot of tables, and I'm sure it's new decks every day. So
yeah, it would have to be. So
that's crazy. If anybody knows the answer to that question, please tweet at us and let us know, because I'd actually be curious to know. I never thought about it.
Yeah, we should do a contest or something. Who, kind of like guessing how many jelly beans are in the giant jar, right?
Yeah.
Like how many decks of cards they go through in the World Series. We'll find out from Seth or whoever.
Yeah.
We can get that answer. And now I'm kind of curious myself. But yeah, I mean, obviously, they have to pay for each deck, so they probably just look for a good deal. Well, one year they must have gotten a really good deal because the cards were horrible, and. Yeah, it was not worth whatever money they saved on not using whoever the best is. I don't even know nowadays. I remember at one point it was Chem cards. I remember that was
Chem and Copeg were always the big ones that I heard about, but there might be better ones now for all I know. Yeah. But I have a set of Copegs, and I've had them, I bet you, a decade. And I've never had to replace a single card or buy a new deck. They're incredibly good quality.
They're really good cards. I think they have like a lifetime guarantee or a 20-year satisfaction guarantee, something crazy with them. So you spend, I don't know, $20 on a deck of cards, but you never have to buy another deck again, is the theory, until somebody gets pissed off in your game and then wrinkles one up.
Right. Or beer gets spilled on them. Actually, they're plastic, so even that wouldn't bother them.
Yeah, even that's fine. You could use them as coasters, and you probably should. Yeah. So what about cheating? Have you ever been cheated? Do you think you've ever been in a game that was dishonest or that something was going on? Obviously not to the degree of Mike Postle, like having an accomplice in the booth or whatever we think he was up to, but have you ever felt like maybe something fishy was going on?
I don't think so. Not in a live game anyway, at least that I've ever noticed. The only thing I can think of that's I've suspected has happened before, and I would pretty much guarantee has. In this, going back to the Twitch thing, so I play on a 3.5 minute delay, so that I can show my whole cards, and my opponents can't watch my stream and see what my cards are. But every once in a while, a hand will play out just perfectly and long enough that it'll go through the delay. In other words, the hand lasts longer than 3.5 minutes, essentially. And I'm pretty sure I've had once or twice somebody watching my stream and seeing my cards. And there's not...
I can't even imagine an online poker hand lasting 3.5 minutes. That is a long time.
Yeah, usually, and obviously I've played, I don't even know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hands. So it happens pretty rarely. And the only way for it to really happen is like somebody disconnects, and and then there's like a 90-minute or 90-second countdown or whatever, and then like the next two people take a really long time to make a decision, and it's usually a multi-street hand that pretty much has to get to the river. But those are the ones where it matters the most, right? Because maybe you're running a big bluff, or you're trying to get value, or whatever, and if they see your cards, they can play perfectly. So, but I'm almost certain that has happened before.
I was often wondering about that. Players who play big tournaments online, basically live on a few-minute delay, and your opponents are finding out very shortly after the hand. Like, how many of your opponents do you think are watching your Twitch stream while you're playing? Would you guess?
Quite a few, because the number of people who come in my Twitch stream chat and say, "Hey man, I'm on your left in that $11 10K or whatever." Like, I would say that happens every single night. And a lot of times they'll even say like, "Hey, should I leave? I just got moved to your table." And I'm like, "No, man. Like, I choose to stream my hands. I have a delay on for my protection, but if you get information from my stream that helps you, hopefully not my actual cards, but maybe my bet sizing philosophies or whatever. Like, if you get any of that from me and it helps you, then that's my fault. I'm not even so sure. Like, I can't quite decide if it's even cheating to see my whole card. Like, if the hand takes too long and somebody sees my whole cards and they happen to be at my table, that's kind of my fault, unless they do the tanking to try to get through the delay to see the cards. But if it just kind of happens, then it's kind of almost not even cheating. It's just sort of like, well, I don't know, man. I'm watching your stream and I saw your cards.
Yeah, I think I might be tempted to like maybe take a few extra seconds to make my decision, knowing that if I take long enough, I might actually get to see what you have before I make my decision. That would be pretty good. But yeah, I guess, of course, that wouldn't count as cheating because, like you say, you are putting yourself in that position. Right. It sounds like maybe that's the longest delay you're allowed to have.
You can have longer ones. It's just the problem is that the longer you make it, the tougher it is to kind of communicate with your community because it's already kind of tough because of the delay, but if it's like a 5 or a 6 minute delay, then all of a sudden you're like, you can't even remember the hand that somebody's asking you about or something. They'll be like, "Oh, why'd you fold that river?" And you're like, "Which river? I have no idea what you're talking about."
Yeah.
So you try to keep it as close to live as you can without the risk of exposing your hands. And I found that 3.5 minutes is pretty good. And it's not like I'm playing high stakes either, right? I'm not playing. I mean, in fact, when I play, recently I played the $2,650 buy-in Venom tournament on ACR, and for that I extended my delay to I think 5.5 minutes. So when I play higher, but if I'm playing a $5 or 2K or something, and if I get cheated out of $5, then so be it. I'll live.
Yeah, it's probably net positive for you anyway at those stakes because if you're getting that much interest in your Twitch stream, it's probably worth more in the long run than even winning that $5 tournament.
Yeah.
So,
true.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So, speaking of online poker, I think you mentioned you had a few hands you wanted to run by me. I'd always love to hear them.
Yeah. So one is, I think, a little more complex. The other is a little bit more straightforward, but I kind of want to get your opinion on it anyway. So I'll do this shorter / straightforward one second. So we'll kind of dig into this first hand and then save the easy one for last.
Sounds great.
Cool. All right. So this is from. It's an $11 buy-in tournament, but I can't see the guarantee for some reason. So I don't know. Probably a 5K or a 10K. Those are usually the ones that I play. $11 5K, $11 10K. And the blinds are 400, 800. I start the hand with a little over 100,000 in chips, so I have a very nice stack for this stage in the tournament. I am the chip leader at the table, and the villain in this hand starts the hand with 23.5k. So his stack's pretty healthy as well, somewhere around 30 bigs. Yeah, 30 bigs. So 400, 800, and there's a 100 ante, and I am in middle position 1. So, and we have ace queen offsuit. ace of
Okay.
spades, queen of clubs. So it folds around to the villain in middle position, so he's one to my right, I guess, and he limps for 800.
Okay. So when you see a player open limp like this online, what do you usually assume? And second part to the question, did you have any kind of feel for this player before he did this play?
Yeah, so if he was in early position, I'll sometimes give them credit for maybe having a strong hand. You know, some people like to limp aces and kings from under the gun or whatever. But when it's middle position, I tend to lean more towards like small pairs, maybe suited connectors. I'm just not a big limper in general, so it's hard for me to know what other people limp. But that seems to be what I see the most. Yeah, small pairs, suited connectors, not really broadways and stuff. Maybe like some suited queen jack type hands, but I would lean towards the two other categories first.
How many players at your table?
9.
Okay. So it's a 9-handed table. You're playing a 30 big blind effective against this villain. You obviously have him well covered. So he's limping in for one of his 30 bigs. And, as everybody probably knows by now, I like to look in terms of M as well. So, I mean, this player, his M is only between 10 and 11.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not really a limp fold kind of stack. I mean, if you have 30 bigs, or especially when the ante is this high, you've got enough in that pot that whatever hand you want to get involved with, you need to be raising and trying to make decisive actions. So I think his play is probably not a good one, no matter what he has.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly.
Yeah, and you had asked if I had any thoughts on him. I don't recall this from the hand, but I can tell you that according to my HUD, he was running 31-8, which essentially means he's playing 31% of pots, but he's only raising 8%. So he is a habitual limper to some degree, which maybe means we can put more junk into his range that we wouldn't expect people to be limping normally. And I think it means we can probably discount like it being a big hand,
right?
Like an ace king or queens plus or anything like that. Probably not even like tens plus.
Yeah, those hands are probably in that 8, right? So the second pre-flop raise percentage. Those are probably all the hands he's raising, the very best hands, and everything else he limps. So he's pretty much a loose passive player. So yeah, I mean, obviously that's not a winning strategy. We all know that. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, with all that, he's on your immediate right?
Correct. Yeah, so we'll have position.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and bump it up kind of big. I like to take a page out of our friend Alex Fitzgerald's book here. Because once people limp in nowadays, they don't like to fold. Mm-hmm. You might as well really exploit that by making a larger raise than what would be quote-unquote standard. So if the standard raise here would be something like, I don't know, 2,700 or so, I would go much bigger here and make it like 4,000. Your hand is very strong compared to his range since he's limping in with 30% of his hands. And also, you really want to discourage anyone behind you from trying to get frisky, thinking that you're trying to isolate the fish. Now, I don't know how much of that kind of behavior goes on in a $10 buy-in online tournament on ACR, but certainly live, that's something to worry about. Like if a really talented player behind me figures out that my raises are designed to isolate the spot at the table, now I have to worry about him playing back with not much, because that's just something that we do to each other in the live setting. I don't know if that happens a lot online, especially at this buy-in price point. Mm-hmm. So, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's true, and I actually like your raise size better than the one I chose. I went to 2650, but I completely agree with you on the philosophy of when people limp, they don't like to fold, so we might as well make it bigger, because we have a great hand. It's a value hand, so I'd rather just get more chips in the middle. But yeah, we went to 2650. A little bit too small. I mean, it's not like it's not a crime or anything to make it 2650, but I think at least like 3200, but even bigger would be fine too.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it too, it's like I'm trying to set up a really favorable SPR situation. So if I make it 4,000, and let's assume this guy calls, then we're basically going to have 10,000 in the pot total on the flop, and he's only going to have less than 20,000 behind. So his SPR is going to be less than 2. He'll probably get committed with any piece of the flop, and that's a good thing when I flop well for my hand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I just try to, think in terms of what I'm trying to do total. I mean, then that's, by the way, the reason why we don't want to limp when we have an M of 10 or 11 or 30 big blinds. You don't want to have much of a limping range with this kind of stack, because when you get raised, you usually have to fold. Otherwise, you end up getting committed too often with hands you don't want to be committed with, but because your stack is so short,
right,
you're just kind of stuck with it. So, for example, if he limps in with something like Jack 10 and a flop comes 10 high, because his stack is so short, especially if we make it 4,000, his stack's going to be really short, and we'll sometimes have that hand crushed, because of course we're also going to make this raise with aces, kings, and other big hands, ace 10.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that flop could just basically be the death of him. That's why you just want to throw those hands away when your stack is that short, in my opinion, especially from early middle position like he's in.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, instead you make it 2650, which is going to set up, just some quick math in my head, like about 6,300 in the pot, and he's still going to have 20K behind. So his SPR is going to be a little over 3, if my math is close.
Yep, you're pretty close. 7,400 in the pot, and he has just under 21K.
Okay, yeah, so that puts him like almost exactly at SPR of 3, which is it's not bad, of course. That's a fine setup for you, but yeah, like we really want to get him to where it's going to be hard for him to fold when he hits a piece.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I agree. So spoiler alert, he does call the raise, so we go heads up. Yes, yeah. Yep, so we go heads up to a flop, like I said, 7,400 in the middle, and the flop comes King 7-9, 2 spades, and as I mentioned, I have the ace of spades, and he checks. So, based on what I was saying, like I'm expecting this normally from a normal opponent to be a lot of small pairs and things like that. There's a king on the board, which favors our range. I think this is a pretty clear c-bet spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't even have to bet that much here, because even a small bet should get him to fold like pocket fours or 5-4 suited. I don't know like how many of his suited connectors he's going to limp call with here pre-flop, but they all miss the flop except for like 8-7, 9-8. Right, there are like hands with an 8, maybe like 10-9. Like, there aren't that many, and yeah, obviously the king doesn't hit his range much at all.
Right.
I guess he might limp in with king 10 and then call your raise, depending on how bad he is. Yeah, to me that play would just be atrocious on all levels, but it would result in him having a top pair hand here. But even if he does call your flop bet, we have so many backdoor possibilities. Plus the chance even when he calls, we might still be good. Mm-hmm. But if he has the Jack 10 that I mentioned earlier, he's double gutted now, and he's definitely going to call this flop bet.
Yeah. So,
and we're still ahead. We just don't want to hit a queen in that case.
Exactly. Yeah, so I agree with your analysis there perfectly. Again, I don't think we need to bet super big, because we're just going to fold out all those hands that we crush, so that's fine. So yeah, I bet 2,099 into 7,400, and he calls.
Now that's a really small bet. I mean, I might have gone just a tad bigger. Like I was thinking more like 2,400. It's kind of splitting hairs there, but yeah, I like the basic philosophy of we don't need to bet very much. and we're really just trying to fold out like his total whiffs and maybe his pairs below sevens. I think they should always fold even for this small bet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like it.
Cool. So there's now 11.5k in the pot, and the turn is the Queen of Hearts.
That's so funny. I just said it.
I know. And for the record, I didn't send this hand to Clayton before, so.
Yeah, so guys, if we get to the river and this guy has Jack 10, especially since this will be like the second time this has happened in the last month, I swear I don't get these hands ahead of time, and I don't know what the villain has in this hand. And in fact, KB and I didn't even talk about this hand before we started recording, so that's the full disclaimer, whether you believe it or not.
That's the truth.
So it does hit his double gut shot on the flop. I'm not really sure he has that, though, because a lot of players would check raise it. Like a lot of times when you're kind of short stacked or medium short stacked and you flop a draw, especially that your small continuation bet is very tempting for me to raise in villain shoes. You know what I mean? Like you only need at 2,099. I could put pressure on for 5,500,
right?
Which doesn't even commit me yet to the pot, because that's one thing about your small bet is that it's easier to check raise than a large bet would be.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think I would expect some of those types of hands to check raise as well. So I guess I'll get to the action and then we can try to piece together what we think this guy might have. So he checks the Queen of Hearts turn, and I decided to go ahead and bet. I feel like we're gonna have the best hand here a lot of the time. And if he is on a draw, like let's say he has like a gutter or the double gutter or a flush. Well, I guess if he had the double gutter, he got there. But let's say he has two spades. Maybe he has 5-6 of spades or something. I want to charge him for that draw. And
yeah,
like
for sure. I mean,
he's not.
He doesn't have as many flush draws as he would if you didn't have the ace of spades.
Right.
I said that backwards, but I think everybody knows what I mean. So it's not that he can't have a flush draw, but if he does, it's going to be with a hand like 5-4 of spades, or maybe like Jack 10 of spades, which just made the nuts. Queen Jack of spades. That would be great, right? If he has Queen Jack of spades, that would be great, because now he's got a pair and a flush draw, but we're still ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's certainly that's the kind of hand he could certainly have.
Obviously that hand would always call your small flop bet, and now has to continue now that you made second pair.
Yeah.
Here on the turn. So yeah, I definitely agree with betting. There's like 11,500 in the middle.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'd put in. It's really more about his stack at this point, isn't it? He's only got 20,000 left in his stack.
Yeah, 18.6k.
Okay, so 18.6. Yeah, so I would make another small bet here. I think I would put in like 4,500.
Yeah, I like that better. I went a little bigger. I went 6,200, which is about half pot. I think it's a little smaller than that would be better.
Yeah, are you planning to fold to a check shove here, or what is the strategy? What are we doing if it's raised?
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem. Well, not necessarily a problem on this street, but could become a problem on future streets. I don't know if I had much of a plan. I was really just thinking. Honestly, I think I just thought he was going to fold to my turn bet. I'm like, okay, he had his flush draw, he didn't get there, or he had 6-8 or something and didn't get there, so he's going to fold now. So yeah, I don't think I had much of a plan. I don't know. Let's see if he. So 17k in there. If he shoves 18, it's 12 to win 35. I don't know if I can fold.
I don't know if you can either, because I bet here on the turn is big. I'm not sure it's easy to fold if you bet what the amount that I suggested, but it's a little easier just because the price isn't as case. But again, that's not why I'm making the bet. I'm actually trying to get more value.
Right.
I mean, I value bet, but you sometimes change your mind about what's a value bet and what isn't when you get check raised.
I know, yeah. Yeah, and what's kind of interesting too, and this is sort of an online HUD type thing, is players who tend to be passive pre-flop like this also tend to play their hands passively post. So, like if he flops a flush draw, this type of player I've noticed tends to just call. You know, they don't check raise their flush draws. They don't, check raise the turn when they pick up a combo draw or anything. They just kind of tend to call, and hope they get there. And then if they don't, they fold. So to me, in hindsight, I think if this guy did raise, it would actually, I might actually probably should fold. Just because, again, I don't, even when he picks up like another draw, like say the queen gives him, I don't know, like I guess he could have like ace jack of spades or something. I still would just expect him to call unless his hand actually improved. So then suddenly I'd be like, oh, he has king queen, or he has 10 jack, or queen 9 suited, or something like that.
Yeah, if he's not going to semi-bluff his draws as a check raise, then you basically have to fold because you can't beat anything.
Right. And then, again, that's not like a hard and fast rule. It's just a tendency that I've noticed amongst.
And I've noticed that live too. I mean, players who are passive, they're just passive, you know. And the really aggressive players don't tend to like slow down on the flop, you know.
Right.
Like if you're getting after it, you're getting after it on all streets typically.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, we kind of have a feel for this guy, and he hasn't shown any, not one aggressive action yet. But if he does, it might send off some warning bells in my mind. The problem is he's so close to commitment already with the stack size, especially when you bet 62. It's, even if you feel like you're not, even if you feel like you're hardly ever ahead, you might still be tempted to call just for the price.
Right.
Especially because it's kind of hard to put him on anything, especially with this card. It's only, what are you putting him on? Queen 9 or Jack 10? Because he really doesn't have a king a lot.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's a weird spot.
So,
But yeah, so I like I said, I bet 6,200. He does call.
Okay.
So now there's 24.2K in the middle. He has 12.3K behind. And the river is the 7 of hearts. So now the board is king 7, 9, queen 7. And there's 3 hearts out there now.
Oh, okay. So the backdoor hearts came in.
Yep.
All right. So.
And so I guess I should say do you want to know his action first because he's first act?
Well, I usually like to think before he acts.
That's cool.
Whether I like the river, and before you tell me that he goes all in here on the river. I mean, assuming that's what he's going to do. If I didn't know that, generally speaking, I would say this is a good card for us. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many 7s he has in his range, although we did say earlier he could limp call with the suited connector type hands 7-6, 7-8, and they probably would have called your small bet on the flop, although I'm just not convinced that those hands would have called a large turn bet like the one you made.
Right. Especially when the board got even worse for him, obviously.
It got worse, right. So, the queen comes off, and as he really is hanging on with a 7, I think it's very hard to put him on a 7 at all.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, I like the card a lot. I wish it were not another heart, but, in the big scheme of things, like if your opponent made some kind of weird flop call and then got there with the running hearts, it's like, okay, he's supposed to double up through me on this hand. I'm actually still more concerned about Jack 10 than anything.
Mm-hmm. So I think my intention here would have, if he had checked, I think I would probably jam. I would just hope that he has like ace 9 or like, I don't know. tens or something.
Yeah.
It just calls off.
Oh,
Like the way they have him played, I just feel like I'm good here every time. But he throws us a little bit of a curveball, as you predicted. He shoves for 12.3K. I wish I remembered the timing. I don't remember if it was like a tank shove or just a snap shove or what the details were, but he does shove.
Okay, so his bet is only half the pot.
Yeah.
And a bet of half the pot offers 3-1 on a call. Is that right? Yeah. So one question is, are we good 25% of the time? 3-1. I mean, I think we are.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're good more often than that against most opponents. Now you have this guy's HUD, and if it's like he never, ever, ever jams a river, like like how many stats you can see on a HUD, but if you have clear and irrefutable evidence that the guy just doesn't ever do anything big for his tournament life, then you could fold. But I think 25% is not a very high watermark for your hand being good. I mean, he should be doing this at least some of the time with those busted draws.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think, but we also, I'm not trying to beat you up, but we're getting 3-1 because your turn bet was so big.
Right.
A smaller turn bet, and then his shove is giving us worse than 3-1, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the problem, is so much of his stack is already in here. I don't think I can fold ace queen. I mean, it's a crying call, but I think I have to call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I came to the same conclusion. A lot of me thought, okay, missed draws, of course. And I kind of was thinking, because one of the things I was worried about was Jack 10, like you mentioned. But in my mind, I kind of thought he would check shove the turn with Jack 10 because he doesn't have that much behind. I've shown aggression, and he might want to protect against like another spade, if I'm betting with a spade draw, or maybe I picked up the heart draw. I don't know. I just kind of felt like, okay, if he's going to get it in, maybe he wants to get in on the turn before a bad river comes for him.
That's a really good point, Eric. That's a really good point, because now, especially like the loose passive players, they get sucked out on a lot because they don't bet and raise, they check and call.
Yeah.
So like that end up so he's seen how many times that third heart can come on so now on this turn card, the board is like straightening out, and there are 2 available flush draws now instead of just 1. I think a lot of players with Jack 10 would check shove in his shoes, and it's probably the right play in cases, because you can get action from worse, and even when you don't, many times you're protecting your equity in the pot when you're at the stage in the tournament where your tournament life is at risk.
Right.
So you could very well be drawing live even if he does have the nuts on that card. So yeah, you could discount Jack 10 a little bit. Obviously he could have it, but yeah, I do think many players would check shove the turn, especially with your large bet sizing. I'm saying large. You bet half the pot on the turn. It's not like you overbet or something. It wasn't that large.
Right.
But yeah, I think that when you put in that much, he should feel like you're happy with your hand, and would probably usually put you on a king and assume that you won't be able to fold a king when he checks and goes all in on you with the Jack 10. So you're usually going to call when you have a king or better.
Right.
Yeah, he could be optimistic and hope you flopped a set, and now he really wants to get it all in with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, all right. So
yeah,
with all that,
that's kind of what went through my mind, like that combination of ideas, and getting the price we were getting. And I know this shouldn't necessarily go into the decision, but I think the fact that I had a very large stack, I was like, okay, well, if I lose 12K more, I still got like 100 big blinds, no big deal. So I did call, and he showed us the Jack 10 of spades.
Oh wow, what a spot for him. So he flopped a gut shot and a flush draw, a double gut shot and a flush draw, and didn't check raise you.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, now that's a passive player.
Yeah, to me, like, I won't say I'm passive, but I'm not as aggressive as say Mark, for example, would like me to be.
Right.
With doing things like check raising and stuff like that. But man, like to me, this is the flop literally designed to be check raised with the exact hand Jack 10 of spades.
Yeah. I mean, he's doing well against everything.
Yeah.
He's doing great when he's doing fine when you have 3 kings.
Right.
He's fine when you have 3
Yeah.
kings.
Yeah, so I was
Wow.
definitely a little surprised to see it, but
Okay.
and yeah, so I mean, it's always interesting too because in hands like this, we lost the hand, but I always try to remind myself it doesn't necessarily mean that we've made a bad call. If we think we're going to win that hand 25% of the time, then we just have to keep making that call, over and over again, and eventually we start winning.
Yeah. Now, I think one thing that I'm noticing here is it's really atrocious to be in early middle position with 30 big blinds with the ante of 100. It's just really atrocious to limp at all. Even I know Jack 10 suited is beautiful. We all love that hand. Like
Yeah,
when you make a straight with Jack 10, it's always the nuts.
that's right.
And that's one reason we all love that hand. So when you see that hand, but your stack is too short to play it, you just have to say, wow, I wish I had this on the button or in the big blind so I could call a small raise with it and see a flop. But no, alas, I'm in early middle position and I don't have enough chips to screw around with the Jack 10 type of hand. But for the love of God, don't limp in with it. If you really, really have to play it, at least put in a raise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his play is just...
I'd much rather
Gross.
raise fold it than limp it, especially limp call.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, you want to really get creative, limp jam or something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but yeah, it's like, are you really representing what you think you're representing?
Right.
I
And
don't know.
don't actually do that, by the way, listeners. I was just kidding.
Yeah, but anything but what this guy did, I think would be better because this is just horrible. Like he makes a big mistake limping in, and that is a big mistake. Like the number of big blinds per hour you're losing on that limp. You're only limping for 1 big blind, but you're probably losing like 70% of a big blind.
Yeah.
By making that play with this stack in this situation from this position. It's just bad. It's really bad. Like that is a leak you can plug immediately just by being tighter and more decisive with your pre-flop decisions when you have that type of stack. It's hard to play an M of 10 or 11. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't do yourself any favors when you start limping in with suited broadways like Jack 10. It's just not good.
Yeah, I think it's like the classic. I see this live actually. I think more than online, where people like have hands they want to play, don't have the stack to do it, and don't want to commit 2 big blinds or 3 big blinds and then get raised. So like, well, maybe I could sneak in here for just one big blind. And so they try to limp, and then somebody raises them, and then you see how frustrated they get, and they toss their cards in the middle. Like,
yeah. And had you made it the 4,000 that I wanted to make it pre-flop, imagine how much he would have hated you.
oh
It's
yeah,
like, man, I just wanted to see a flop with this Jack 10, and now you're going to make me, put in a sixth of my stack.
right. And he probably would have.
Yeah, but he's not going to like it.
Yeah.
They don't fold. Like, Alex is right about that. And if you guys haven't read Exploitative Play in Live Poker, Alex Fitzgerald's book, and you haven't watched his videos on Tournament Poker Edge, I mean, he's right about player tendencies. He tells you how to play against the average player in the field. And once they're in for a dime, they're in for $1 is basically one of the key takeaways from that book. And so therefore, you can make their mistakes larger by making your pre-flop raises larger. You want to build big pots when you have the better hand and you're in position. And this was an example of that. Ace Queen is way better than Jack 10 suited, and you had position. And so that's why I would advocate building the bigger pot there pre-flop. Not that I would really expect him to fold for any amount. He already put in 800. He can't fold for 3,200 more.
Right. Too funny.
Yeah, but Alex is great. I really like his writing and kind of changing some of the thoughts that I have about tournament poker
Mm-hmm.
from reading that book. It's just kind of the approach. And, don't be afraid to make a non-standard raise size or bet size, because if you have a reason, a rationale, and a strategy, if they all think you're an idiot, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when people start like wondering if you made a mistake with your overbet or whatever, that's when you got them confused.
Yeah.
Did you mean to bet 1.3x pot? Yep.
Did you grab the wrong chip by mistake? Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that was an interesting hand, and always fun to kind of accidentally predict what your opponent had.
I know. We're getting good at this. Or
Yeah,
you're
it
getting
feels
good
good.
at it, I should say.
Yeah. So you had another one, right?
Yeah, so I have one more, and this one's kind of interesting in a different way, so I'll be interested to get to that point of the conversation. There's not much interesting, really, until we get to the turn, I think, but I'll run it down for you guys. So we are at 700, 1,400 blinds.
Same tournament?
This is a different tournament. This is actually an 8 max tournament. I believe it's a $22 8 max.
Okay.
So we're playing 8-handed, obviously. Well, I guess not obviously. We have a full table. Let's put it that way. And yeah, like I said, we're at 700, 1,400. We start with 72K. Actually, about 73K. So, again, a pretty healthy stack going into this hand. We are in middle position. We see 2 folds, and we look down at ace-queen of clubs.
You always have ace-queen.
I know. This is the ace-queen episode. I'm going to title this, How to Play Ace-Queen.
Great.
So probably, not much to discuss here. I think a pretty standard open. We make it 3K. Actually, 3,099, because you know how I like to put 99 on the end. So like 2.5x, basically. Actually, just maybe like 2.25. And the guy directly to our left calls, and then the big blind calls. So we go to the flop 3-handed. There's 11.4K in the middle. First act check. Oh, sorry. The flop is ace 7-7, 2 diamonds.
Okay. So we have top pair and a queen kicker on an ace 7-7 where we have no chance of making a flush, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the one that bugs me is the player on our immediate left calling. I'm a lot more concerned about him than the big blind who was kind of priced in and should call with a pretty wide range. When you raise from what, third position you said?
Correct.
Yeah, so you raise from early, well, it's 8-handed, so middle, and then he calls on your immediate left. That is typically a pretty strong hand because he has to worry about getting squeezed out by somebody 3-betting behind him. Most players don't screw around too much in that what we used to call bad relative position.
Mm-hmm.
So there's absolute position, which is where I am in relationship to the button, but then there's relative position, which is where I am at in relation to the raiser.
Right.
And the best place to be compared to the raiser is on his immediate right, because when you call, you close the action, right?
Right.
So he's on your immediate left, which is the worst place to be. So if he's competent, he probably has a pretty strong hand. That doesn't change the fact that it's a fantastic flop for us. Ace 7-7 is a great flop, and it's very unlikely that player on our immediate left called with a 7.
Right.
I don't know what 7 he should have in his range.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to ask you, you said this is a $22 buy-in. Do these tend to attract a different caliber of player, or is it kind of the same guys playing the $10 tournaments as the $20 tournaments?
I would say those two are pretty similar in terms of field strength.
Okay.
I don't really start to see much of a difference in competency until you get to about the $50 mark.
Okay.
Generally speaking, of course. I mean, he could be a free roll player that's satellited into this for all I know. But generally speaking, yeah, this is still going to be your sort of average recreational players. I will say that his numbers are pretty respectable in terms of what he's running on the HUD. I mean, he's 28, 18, 7, which is, maybe I wouldn't mind seeing the preflop raise number be a little bit higher, but generally speaking, he's not like, he's not calling state, he's not playing 40% of hands or anything. So I would agree with you that I think this is going to lean towards a strong hand. The good thing about that is that I think the strongest of them may have 3-bet pre. So aces, for example, or ace king. So I think,
and those have anyway, because we know where 2 of the aces are already.
Yeah. So I think, his hand is going to tend to be more things like 8s through jacks. Jacks might have 3-bet pre too, but those kind of hands, or possibly like ace 10, ace jack, ace 9 suited, and I'm perfectly happy with him having those hands. So
yeah, of course. He could have same hand as you. Certainly, a lot of players would just flat with ace queen there.
Yep.
If he's got a 7, he's got 4 of them, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly are some players, and he is deep, by the way. I should have mentioned he has 170k, so he has like,
he's got you covered.
Yeah, he's got nearly double our stack. So he could certainly splash around with things like 6, 7, 7, 8 suited kind of hands, but I think we can discount those for sure.
Yeah, I think even with a deep stack, that's pretty dangerous to be calling from where you guys are. In middle position here, especially with all those players yet to act behind him. It's kind of a leak if he does call. Like, I know we all love like those suited connector hands. Like, I love like looking down at 8, 7 of diamonds, like so beautiful.
Yeah.
If somebody like Derek opens in like relatively early position on my immediate right, I just have to throw it away.
Yeah.
It's a leak. You're spewing money if you do anything else.
Agreed.
So, all right. So, what happens? They check to you?
Yeah. So the first guy checks. It's on us, and I bet 5,700 into 11.4k. So I don't even know what that
no
is.
problem.
The guy to our immediate left, who flatted originally, calls, and then the third player folds. So now we're heads up, and there's 22.8k in the middle. And I have 64k behind, and as I mentioned, he has infinite chips. The turn is the ace of hearts. So now it's ace 7 7. And this is where I kind of wanted to start really kind of get into the discussion, because I mean, obviously we like this turn a lot in terms of it improving our hand, but it does make me wonder, do we bet or check here? Because let's say he has something like king queen of diamonds, or I mean, if he has a 7, then we're probably getting at least one more street out of him anyway. But I'm just worried, like, if he has almost anything, he's gonna fold.
Yeah, I see now why you wanted to bring up this hand, because like I said before, I don't think he has a 7 unless he flopped quads, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he shouldn't have very many 7s. Like, yeah, I mean, players do play weird hands in weird spots that they shouldn't actually play at all. So it's a non-zero chance, as I love to say, that he has a 7. But if he's any good, which it seems like from his numbers he might be, he probably shouldn't have a 7 very much. Also, just from combinatorics, it's hard for him to have 7s, even if he always plays all of his 7s.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously he doesn't always play all of his 7s, but in this situation, I'm not that worried about a 7. And the fact that he called on the flop, it's hard to range him there because he doesn't usually have a 7. It's hard for him to have an ace. And this before the next ace hit on the turn.
Mm-hmm.
His flop call made me wonder what the heck he's working with. And I think that most of his range will be hands like king, queen of diamonds, maybe king, jack of diamond, like flush draws that had to call you on the flop.
Yeah.
Are there any other hands he might have tried to call you with, like maybe like pocket jacks, pocket 10s, as a float? It seems odd that he would do that because the big blind hasn't spoken yet. So,
right. Yeah, I kind of feel like I think he certainly could have like let's say eights through jacks, that he would maybe float the flop with. And he might actually sort of like this turn if he has those hands, because it just makes it less likely that I can have an ace.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what makes me think, like, why, like, do I bet here? Because if I bet flop and bet turn on this run out, like, he's gonna wonder, why am I still betting if I don't have an ace? Like, aren't I scared that he could have the ace? You know, like, let's say I have kings or queens. Like, am I gonna barrel this card? I don't know.
Definitely not. I mean, I don't think you personally would, and I don't think that most of us would either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, agreed. I think betting really looks like an ace, which is probably a good reason to make that play when you don't have one.
Yeah,
if
true.
You can get really strong, right? Like if it really looks that strong, you might as well do it, whether you have the ace or not. But yeah, I guess, exploitatively, we might want to just check it when we do have the ace, and maybe bet it when we don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I like that.
Right. Yeah, because if you bet it, like you say, you're going to lose him a lot, except a rare occasion when he has quads.
Right. Yeah, so like I said,
you could have ace jack, and we're chopping, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But like I said, there's about 23K in the middle. So I am tempted to want to get more chips in the middle, of course, especially since this guy's got so many of them. But I just kind of feel like we're gonna lose him too often when we bet, so I opted to check, in hopes that he bluffed, or possibly just kind of go like bet check bet, bet the river or something, and then he might actually find the crying call with jacks or tens or something. Yeah, so I checked, and he checks behind.
Okay.
So now
he doesn't have quads, right? Like he doesn't play 4-7s this way. So at this point, when he checks back, our hand is good almost all the time, right?
Yeah, or chopping.
Yeah, right.
Because I think it's possible he checks back an ace if he has one here.
Yeah. For the same reason why you checked.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
because he's like, he's like, this guy gave up. Maybe he has king queen. I better give him a chance to check or to catch up. And
I can squeak a little value out on the river, maybe. Right? Yeah. Okay.
So check, and the river is the 4 of hearts. So now it's
brick.
Ace 7-7, Ace 4. Yep, complete brick. Doesn't really change anything for us at all, unless he happened to have 4s. But even that wouldn't matter, because I think he's probably still going to fold if we do anything. So this is I tend in this spot to go to bet flop, check turn, bet river. I actually do that with a lot of hands, just because I find that it's the best way to get 2 streets for me sometimes. But now I'm kind of thinking the same thing. Like I just said about this 4. It literally changed nothing. So, if this had been the 4 of diamonds, I think I love betting here. But I don't know what we ever get called by that we beat when we bet. So what do you think about checking the river again?
Yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you could try to make some kind of tiny bet to get just a little morsel of value from a curious call from a hand like pocket tens, right? I mean, you could go for just maybe I don't know,
bet 4K or something.
5K. Yeah, 20% of the pot, just because it'll be well, come on, of course I have to call that stupid bet, and then you just squeeze out a little more value. I think it's way better to just check, and then you can catch all his bluffs when he missed the diamonds or whatever. The problem is he won't bet his pairs, I don't think, because he can just check and show them down.
Yeah.
He can't get value for any of them. So, yeah, I think checking the river is the best play.
Cool. Good, because I made that decision. It's so hard when you have a big hand, because you just really want to get paid, But it's am I going to, how am I going to, if I ran this hand 100 times, how am I going to get paid the most times? And I just kind of feel like checking is the key here. It's going to look really weak on our part, and it gives him a chance to bluff. So we do indeed check. The river action doesn't really matter too much, but Well, it matters in that we got our desired result. He bets 13.8K, and we raise, and he folds.
That's great. Yeah, so he probably had that to draw, or a pure bluff, where he's like, look, Derek can't possibly be this patient to check it all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they figure, well, if you're not going to try to win this pot, maybe I'll try to win this pot. And then they get the bad news when you check raise them. Actually, if you guys listened to last week's episode, I got into a hand where our friend Jesse Sylvia flopped the nuts on day one of the main event. Not exactly the nuts. I believe he had pocket sevens on 9-7-4 and had many opponents. He was in the small blind, and he checks it down. Checks it 3 times.
Wow.
And I don't know how many of us can flop a set, especially when the board is like semi-wet, straight draws and flush draws readily available when you have 5 opponents. He checks it, and then he checks it, and he checks it. And we really got into this hand last week because I was really fascinated by just the patience that he showed and the expertise in realizing that the best way to make money with this hand is to check it, even if it means that sometimes I will be outdrawn by any number of available draws. He didn't feel like betting was the most profitable way to play his hand. And so, yeah, it's very hard to do because, like you say, when we have a big hand, you get a little excited, the heart starts beating, and you're like, oh, I can't get some money in the middle.
Yeah.
But sometimes strategically it's better to just check and see if you can get somebody else to pull the trigger. And also that protects those times when you check with nothing. You know,
Right.
You can't always bet when you have it and always check when you don't. You got to mix that up just so that you're not exploitable. So, or we're all exploitable, but this way you'll be less exploitable.
Yeah.
So,
So that was this week in Killingbird poker hands.
yeah, we love your ace queen hands. So yeah, thanks for bringing those in. I love having a week off of digging up hands that I noted from the World Series. And because I've been so busy in comedy lately, I actually haven't had much time to play myself. I do have a Vegas trip planned for next month, so I'm really excited. And no, I will not be staying at Bally's.
Yeah, screw them. Yeah, actually, humble brag, I actually shipped a tournament last night on ACR, so I'm going to dig through that hand history over the next couple of weeks and maybe pull a few from that for future episodes. So
yeah, that's good. All the ace queens, just search for ace.
Yes. That's my new favorite hand. It's funny, I didn't even realize that when I picked these 2 hands until we got into them.
Well, you know, there's so much more to a poker hand than what 2 cards we have. So that's a good sign that you didn't notice that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, congrats on shipping. Which one did you win?
It was the $22 8K, which runs really late at night. It starts at like midnight or something. I think I finished at 4 a.m. It's a turbo, which is cool. Or like it's sort of I don't know. Turbos on ACR are a little different than turbos on PokerStars. I feel like turbos on PokerStars end in like an hour and a half. Not so much on ACR. But yeah, so it was like 1650, I think, which is nice because I've been on a little downswing lately. So the money wasn't even as important to me as the fact that I finally got off the schneid.
Yeah, but you know what? If you're running bad in like $11 tournaments and $22 tournaments, you know, winning 1,600 is pretty nice.
Yeah.
That's a lot of $11 buy-ins you just won there.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I
That's
was
what I look
quite
at.
happy.
Yeah, and you stay in your bankroll and, you know, just play what you're supposed to be playing. You'll be great.
Yep.
You obviously know what you're doing. I can't criticize you too much today.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. Don't worry, I'll bring you something good to criticize me about next time.
Either that or we'll bring Casey on. He'll cut you right back down to size.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what else do you want people to know about? Your Tuesday thing still happening?
Yep, Tuesday home games are still running, and in fact, somebody actually came into the chat the other night and said, "Hey, I heard about your Twitch stream on the podcasts, so here I am." So that was pretty cool. So yeah, for anybody out there who wants to come hang out, I'm actually thinking about trying to put together a TPE game, like a private tournament for just TPE members and friends of TPE. So I don't know. I might work on that. So if you're listening, don't yell at me if I never make it happen. But I'm gonna look into it at least and see, because I think that might be kind of fun, even if it's just like once a month or something.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And you know, now it's gone from being in your head to something you've actually talked about on the podcast. So you might be more responsible in actually doing it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So still doing that, and I mean that's really about it. Just kind of busy with life and stuff right now. But yeah, everything's
the night
good.
that you up till 4 winning the $22 tournament. Tell me you didn't go to work the next day.
I did, but not until about noon.
Okay.
And of course, I mean, by going to work, it means basically like walking down my stairs and going into my office, my home office. But I did work. That's one of the things about owning your own business is you basically never really have a true day off. Like even Christmas Day, like you have to check emails, and that's somebody's account password expired or whatever. It's like there's no days off.
Yeah, tell me about it. Curse of the entrepreneur, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So I'm sure you wouldn't either.
100% agree.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, for Derek Tenbush, Killingbird, and for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We love you.
In Texas plays, fold 'em, let 'em hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read my poker face. She's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read my poker face. She's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, if it's not rough, it isn't fun. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read my poker face. She's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read my poker face. She's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. Can't read mine, no she can't read my poker face. She's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read my poker face.